What makes Trey McKinney such a dominating force on the Bassmaster Elites and tournament fishing in general? Last year, 2024, was his first year on the Elites, and he won the Rookie of the Year. If it wasn't for a phone call, he would have won the Angler of the Year and blown it out. There's something about him that's special, and I was fortunate enough to attend the American Bass Fishing Alliance conference. Well, it's actually the annual Regional High School Bass Conference held at Vianney High School in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a conference that's put together it's catered toward high school fishermen and women, and they bring in regional touring pros and just folks that have a ton of knowledge. They have seminars. It's a really neat setup. This is the first time I was able to go to it, and there were several speakers there. This video is Trey McKinney's seminar. So you get a little bit of insight into the way Trey McKinney's mind works, and it gives you an idea of why he's able to perform at such a high level at such a young age. So we're going to have several other seminars coming down the pipe. Stay tuned for those. But for right now, let's get into the classroom. You can get a feel of how this conference works. It's an annual deal. They will have it the first part of December every year. So Trey McKinney and his thought process.
I do not. So is it more of like a Tennessee style river? Like Tennessee River, like Kentucky Lake, stuff like that? Or like a river?
I fished the Tennessee River.
Okay. You fished Tennessee River before?
Yeah, next to Gunnersville.
Next to Gunnersville. Okay, so where are most of you how far are most of you from here? You guys can just yell it out. 2 hours?
20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Half an hour.
5 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good. What kind of, I'm guessing you guys don't have a whole lot of lakes around here, do you guys?
Not within a couple hours.
Not only a couple hours. What's kind of the most lakes around here? Just kind of like dirty water? Kind of catch 12 pounds in your winter?
Yeah, they're mostly sediment lakes, smaller.
Okay. Well, have you guys traveled much for high school? Most of you in a high school team? Okay. What's the funnest lake you guys fish?
Table Rock.
Table Rock? Table Rock? Who you guys? Gunnersville?
Beaver's Dam and Carlisle.
Carlisle.
That's really
Rough.
the only. Those are about the only two that they take us to.
Yeah.
I mean, they won't let us
Red
go
Lake's not
1,045.
Red Lake's not bad. Carlisle,
Red
Yeah, that's.
if I had one free pass to sit at home, that'd probably be mine. Let's see.
I don't see anyone catching those.
I think it's more of a, kind of a catfish,
Crappie,
white
white.
bass.
White bass.
White bass, you can get them there. I've never ate a white bass. I don't know if they do. Heck, I haven't kept fish in too long. Let's see. Favorite
Where are you fishing?
Huh?
Where do you fish?
I try to fish everywhere. I try to go and that's the main thing I can say. The more different kind of diverse places you can fish, the better. So even a pond. You got a clear water pond, that's different than a dirty water pond. They still usually bite, but a lot of times any kind of diversity. So like I'm from Egypt, down there like Southern Illinois, down there in Lake of Egypt. You guys been there? Or, yep.
That stays warm in the winter, right? That water?
They shut it down. Sure did.
It's not doing that now?
They got a skeleton crew. Pumps very little now.
Because my buddy said that's where you want to be in January because
yeah.
they kick out warm water off the power plant.
Yep, they shut it down. Something to do with like bad for the environment or something. I don't know about that.
As
But
of when? Like when did that go down?
Coal-fired plant.
2 years, something like that.
Really?
Coal.
Yeah, they shut down
Yeah.
Coffee, which is
That was-
further north.
I think
Coffee
natural
and
gas
Newton
was
was
cheaper
fire.
than coal. at
I
one
was
point.
told Pyramid, or is it, yeah, not Lake Egypt, but Pyramid,
I believe it.
which is, I guess that's a restaurant, what do they call it?
Strip pits.
Yeah.
Pyramid State Park, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
Pyramid State Park, that's it, yeah. But
Oh,
they
yeah.
have warm water overflow from,
Yep.
is that not the same, water, or power plant? Or is that different?
That's different. Yeah,
That's
Pyramid State Park doesn't have.
So Pyramid State Park is still running warm water through the winter?
I don't think so.
No,
I think
that's
it's just strip
I'm thinking
pits.
it's just strip pits.
Yeah, that's right. The pyramid I'm thinking of is just strip pits. But they did shut it down, but they're pumping very little now. But like that, I live like 2 minutes from the lake. Like Lake of Egypt, that's like literally 2 minutes from my house.
So that's your go-to?
That's where I've learned pretty much a lot that I take anywhere. Anything I've taken and expanded it, I've started there in Egypt because it's a well-rounded lake. So when you guys start any kind of lake, even though it might be a little bit of a drive, but like I don't know how far. Like I know Newton, all them places. I know they're a pretty good drive, but any kind of lakes like that that's well-rounded, that's got points, got stumps, got laydowns, that's an awesome place to start because it don't matter what you're throwing, you can at least get enough bites to learn it. You're right. So that's a lot of times. So like this stuff is more of like, you know, kind of a Gunnersville, big lakes, you know, something that even some of it applies to us. We can do a little few different illustrations for it, but a lot of it's kind of like a big water scenario sometimes. But this over here, so when everybody sees a lay down in the water, what do you first think? Right? Do you think it's how long it is, or like when you're coming by? Because a lot of times, okay, so we got this lay down right here. I mean, that's a big one. You know, that's that tree right there. You see how tall that tree is? You see how tall them are? So when you see a root here at the top of the water, water goes to about right here, right? You can see 10 foot of it, right? Everything else is gone, right? You kind of just fishing by. You know, anytime, normally you catch them right here. You know, you flip a jig right here, drag it down, catch them, anything else like this. But, you know, in practice, you go out there and you fish here and catch them, and all of a sudden you come back in a tournament, and what happens? You know, you get a few bites, but it's not as good as practice was, right? Every time it is. But anytime when I'm fishing a laydown, imagine what it was, right? Grab the theory of imagine what it was, right? So if you see a laydown that big a size, like see, I got a little bitty tree like this. Little bitty tree. Like, that thing ain't gonna come out very far, right? Little bitty tree, you know, that's 20 foot tall. You know, that's not very much at all. That's one, if your boat's sitting right here, that's one cast, easily done. You got the whole thing. But when you got a big grandfather tree, is what I call it, any kind of like timber or something like that, if your boat, say here's the bank, you're coming down through here, you fishing right here, well, you're missing so much of it, right? So when you're fishing a laydown, you got to think like, hey, when I'm picturing the bank, a bank can tell you so much more than what you really think it can if you're really paying attention. Right, let's say I got a flat bank. I mean, it is dirt flat. I mean, flat as nothing. Just like that. There's probably not going to be much worth fishing. You know, there's not going to be a ton out here in the water. There's not going to be a ton of stuff out here. But if I got a bank that's got scattered boulders out here, one close to the water, one up here in the tree, one over here, what makes you think it's where it stops, right? I got big boulders up there, why ain't they out here, right? So that's like when you imagine the bank, you got to imagine what happens and what has happened to that after the fact in the water. So that's like a lot of times when I'm fishing and I'm running down the lake, I see so many different scenarios that could happen. Do they always? No, they don't always. But a lot of times I can have a pretty good ratio with expecting what is there, right? So if I got a laydown, I see one laydown that's this long, but I see how big it is, I know it's going to run out 30 foot. Right? I know unless it's deteriorated or how old the log is, it depends, it's going to run out. So that's cover extended in the lake, so that creates a high percentage area. Right? Anywhere down the bank, high percentage area. Same expression with a bluff. Who's seen fish many bluffs? Many people fish many bluffs, okay? Like Table Rock, anything like that. You got a flat bluff. Goes all the way down at the end of it, right here. Comes out so flat, so flat. Just, I mean, 40 foot here, edge of the water there, just all bluff. And all of a sudden that bluff kind of tapers off, runs down into here, right? So it's got to go somewhere, right? It's got to extend in the water, which creates a high percentage area. So a lot of the times banks can tell you so much about what's going to be underneath. They can't tell you brush piles, nothing like that. I mean, I can't tell you exactly, but I can have a good idea of what's going on. Even, I know I draw a little crazy, but the main thing is it's a good place to start when you're on a new body of water. Imagine the bank and imagine what happened, right? So, like I said, not all the time you're wrong, but smallmouth fisheries, any kind of fisheries that you're looking for high percentage areas, single targets, something like that, it's always better to start with something that's got boulders up on the bank, something that kind of comes out into the water, because most likely they never stop there, right? They're going to come out into the water, and maybe out here you're going to have one boulder. And guess how many fish you might have on it? 2 or 3. Guess what? You might catch 1 or 2 of them. That's a couple fish in your bag limit, right? So anything you can find that an average fisherman will not find is in your favor, right? So and a lot of times, let's say you got one bank. It comes out like this. You got to lay down here. You got to lay down here. What's most people going to fish? They're going to come down through here, fish this lay down, probably, piddle around, might fish this lay down. But what they don't know might be a little gravel patch. Somebody there that might hold a bite. Something like that. Something that's different. Something that's isolated that a lot of people will not fish. So a lot of times fishing is either finding stuff a lot of people don't find, or finding a high percentage area, or truly just out fishing them. A lot of the times that's the 3 things that happen in fishing to make you succeed. And any kind of thing like this. Like right now we're going to get technical, then a little bit we'll back it down. But a lot of times when I'm fishing, I'm trying to see stuff that a lot of people can't see. They got a lot of stuff that's not visible to the eye. And even that could be even as much as like a whole flat bank, right? All mud. This is like any kind of like river system, anything in the world. All flat, but all of a sudden it starts to get a little gravelly here. Starts to get gravel. You got some gravel, and then it stops. Well, that's still going to come out into the water a little bit. So like we're starting like springtime cranking, springtime chatterbait, something like that. You're fishing a mud bank, all of a sudden it gets a little gravel, you catch a fish. Why'd you catch him, right? High percentage area. You got something different down that mud bank that could hold a fish, right? So that's a lot of the times when you're fishing, it could be anything. It could be a flat bank and it just makes a little nub. That's enough for a fish to sit there. I mean, there's been studies on a pool that is literally, I mean, I'm talking about a pool, like all blue, everything surrounded. They put 10 bass in it. What do? They draw one line. 6 out of the 10 bass sit around that one line because it's something different, right? It's something that's completely different. Okay, we're going to talk about, so in a dark room, let's say the lights shut off. What's the first thing to do? I'm going to go, me personally, I'm going to go to the wall. I'm going to have something to connect with, something that feels, something to get me where I'm not just stranded out in the middle of a dark room, right? I'm going to go to a wall. I'm going to feel my way to the door. I'm going to feel my way somewhere. I'm going to relate to something. Same thing with fish. So let's say a laydown right here. It's muddy water. Think they're going to sit out here and relate to it or sit right here? You know, the farther they can see, the less they have to actually be sitting on the log. So like you got dirty water, they're going to sit right on the log. They're not going to be any much else. But if you got a clear water fishery, there could be a rock pile here, and they can see it over here. They can still relate to it. So that's a lot of the times, anything in clear water or muddy water, a lot of the times it depends on how close they're going to relate. Like a muddy water, you can flip your jig right here, bring it down, miss it a little bit, not get a bite. Clear water, you can still do that sometimes. But on muddy water, it's very crucial to bring it right down the edge of that log so it gives that fish a chance to see it. So a lot of times with muddy water, you can actually outfish a lot of people because you can put it in strike zones because they're not as wide. A lot of fish's strike zone in muddy water isn't as wide as clear. But a lot of times, let's see, what's your favorite bait?
Probably just one of the ones I've been running recently, getting a decent amount, was a chartreuse jig.
Chartreuse jig. That's uncommon. That's a good one though. Let's see, what about you?
Probably glide bait or a jig.
Okay, I like you. Go ahead.
Like recently?
No, just anything. Favorite bait. Most common.
Favorite bait? Texas rig.
Texas rig. All right, so it's like anything of it is like, what I can express more than anything in fishing is it's all up here. It's this right here. The biggest tool that you'll ever learn how to use is right here. Everything you ever need and anything can touch is right here. And you limit yourself sometimes. I limit myself all the time. If I'm negative and I am letting myself learn, that day is already starting off bad. You know, every one of us in here fish hard as we can fish the first 30 minutes, hour of the tournament, right? And then everything starts to maybe go downhill. Everything starts to not happen. You lose one, anything else like that. That's when this comes into play. You know, 30 minutes of the tournament, wonderful. Everything's so butter smooth, you know, it's great. You really think you're on the fish, you're going to catch them. And all of a sudden it starts to fall apart about that time you think it's going great. And then you're like, what do I do? You know, you start playing games with yourself. And that's kind of the thing. Once you learn how to control this up here, it makes you so much better off. You know, even if it isn't going as planned, and even if you don't catch them, that's the fine. And one thing, if you guys ever realize it, if you say and you feel that pressure that you have to catch them, that's a bad place to be. That's a really, really bad place to be. Because that's one thing that I really struggle with. It's like, okay, so you do good in 3 tournaments, right? Man, you're a hero. 4th tournament comes around, everybody's like, you got to catch them, man. You're on a hot streak and everything else like that. About 10 o'clock at night, you got 2 fish. That's when you start feeling that pressure, right? Had a good practice, everything about it. That's when you start feeling that pressure of like, I can't let, you know, they expect me to do good. I got to do good. That's a very dangerous place to be. You know, that's a bad up here. You start spinning yourself out. And that's one thing that has affected me at the beginning of this deal is I went into it with a pretty hot streak and I knew I had to catch them. You know, people were going to call me, get texts like, oh man, what happened, all that. That's a very dangerous place to be. So, you know, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You know, it's all great. You know, a dangerous place to be in fishing is like when you go out, you're like, I have to make a check. I said, we don't have to worry about it right now, but it's a very dangerous place. You know, you got to go out there and you got to fish with the confidence that you're like, nothing else matters. I'm going out here to get my 5 bites, put them in the boat, take them to the scales and weigh them. That's the greatest thing you can have in mental attitude is not get, we're all different, right? We all have different mindsets. We all, like I'm kind of a it'll be all right type of guy. You know, like it drives my mom and dad crazy. Something will happen, I'll be like, it'll be all right. You know, life goes on, I'm still alive, nothing happened, you know. So it's a lot of things like that have helped me out a lot. Even I really do care a bunch, but I still not trying to let it bug me. You know, if something happens like that, I lose a fish, I move on with a point where like, I can't go back, right? I can't go back now. Fish is gone, won't bite again, it's all right. You know, go on, and that's gonna make me fish just as hard for the next bite, because I know I gotta make up for it. You know, it pushes me harder when something goes wrong. And that's like a lot of times in fishing, like this, all this stuff is learning, right? But really, truly up here is something you have to master first. Before you can worry about all this and all these baits and all this, you mentally have to get it. And that's like a lot of things with me, is like that's the biggest thing that taught me. And when I go out to learn, I leave everything at the house. I bring this one bait. This is what happens if I'm not catching on this one bait. I'm gonna cut it off, I'm gonna put on my jig, because I know it's gonna catch me. You know, I'm not gonna sit down and take the time it takes to learn this, right? So that's a very important thing, you know, if you guys try and learn a jerkbait. Who all of you got live scope? Quite a few of you? Yeah, that's like, you know, and that's an important thing. And that's what I'm trying to say with the bank stuff. Like, you don't have to have live scope to catch them. Like, does it help? Probably, yeah, it does. But a lot of times, a lot of people now think, you know, like, if you're fishing shallow, you're like, everybody's out there in the middle of the lake. Okay, you know, like, that leaves all the fish on the bank, right? I mean, them fish didn't go nowhere. They still live there. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, we always have resident fish. You'll always have resident fish. Somewhere, some way, they live there. That's just how it is. You know, like there always will be shallow fish. Always. Always will. Now, will it be a better chance to win on certain lakes? No, it won't. But can you do it? You can. You know, like, so a lot of it is resident fish will never go anywhere. They get smart. They get really hard to catch, but they're always still there. You know, and that's an important thing. I fish for a lot of resident fish. You know, they're not. Some can be not as pressured, or some are more pressured than ever. So you got to figure that out on certain lakes. You'll have one point, you know, fish at one time, you cast up there randomly, catch a fish, come back 2 weeks later, throw up there, catch a fish. You know, them fish live there a lot of times. You know, sometimes they'll move up there, but a lot of times they'll have, you know, you'll have a resident group of fish that stay in a creek arm, or stay in a, you know, around a pocket or something. They might not be in the same place every time, but they live in that area. So sometimes you're like, I'll go into a place, let's just say like we're in like, there's 10 laydowns. 10 laydowns, side by side. They all look the same, but I'll never catch a fish off some of them. Ever. I can fish them every time I fish all 10 lakes. I can fish every one. I can fish all 10 laydowns, but 3 of them, every time I feel like I go, I'll catch one. Why? I can never explain it. Never explain it. But a lot of times, fish will use a certain piece of cover for no particular reason. There will just be always either a resident fish or something that kind of lives in that area, or just a high percentage area. It could have a hole, that one laydown could be deeper. That's a lot of things around here that has helped me been very successful, is like, you got 10 laydowns, fish them. I know not everybody has time, but you know, you go fish them and keep, everywhere you get a bite, keep that in your head. You know, like I could go down that bank and I've kept it in my mind, you know, I stay, every time I get a bite, I take a note. Why was that fish there? No, like why? Like, you know, sometimes you catch a random one, it throws you for a loop. But most of the time, you know, there's a reason why that fish was there. And anytime that's like that, anytime you take a guess, you know, you kind of keep that in your head, or you got brush pile, something like that. It's keeping it consistent and keeping a mindset of why that fish was there is really important sometimes on laydown. It can be a really key if you fish, because I know Run Lake has so many laydowns, you know, you couldn't fish them all if you tried. And a lot of times I'll keep my favorite ones that like, so a lot of times what I'll do laydown fishing is I'll fish the laydown 3 times. If I get 1 bite out of 3 times, it's all right, you know, decent. It's not real good. If it's a big one, I might keep it underneath the note. If I fish it 3 and I get 2 bites, that's a good laydown, right? That odds goes through the roof, right? 2 out of 3 times is good, right? That is an absolute key laydown. So if you fish 30 of those laydowns 3 times, you're gonna have an idea. You're gonna have 2 or 3 laydowns or 4 laydowns that always pretty much produce, right? You'll always get a bite. And that's one of the things, like you go to run your pattern, you'll always have those 3 or 4 spots in your back pocket. You know, you get to fishing 10 o'clock, you know, you roll out, I got my 3 laydowns, I'm gonna go hit them. That's a big key around here that's really got me or around locally, around here, you know, when you have enough time, something like that. It's a really good key. You know, I always got those 3 places in my back pocket if I need them, you know. It's a backup plan. It's something always, like I always have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Every time I go into a tournament with a plan, it's pretty much a disaster, to be honest with you. You know, if I have it wrote out, like I'm gonna hit this at 7:30 and then I'm gonna stay here for 30 minutes, I'm gonna go over here, all roses and colorful, and then all of a sudden it goes to crap, right? I hit that how I go on, and it's just going to disaster. When you have that gut feeling, and you just run down the lake, and you're like, that point looks good, and you pull over and catch 3, run down the lake, oh, right there. That is the best. When you guys feel that, that is the best feeling bass fishing can bring me. I love that. You know, that is the best feeling that I've ever got from bass fishing, is figuring out the puzzle. That's how we all do it, right? We're all tricking green pickles. Every one of us. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to trick them. And that's like everything else I get. When you can trick them and not, you know, go off your gut feeling, that's the day that you remember. That's when you start learning. That's when you get that gut feeling. That's when you can start running stuff like this that you can't see. You just run what looks good on the bank. Great feeling. Best feeling ever. But any questions yet? No questions?
I got it.
Go ahead.
Those 10 laydowns you're talking about, 3 of them are producing. In a tournament situation, if you remove those fish, take them back to the marina, you know, they're 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles away. Next time you go out, will those 3 laydowns have fish on them? And how long do you think it takes for those laydowns to reload?
Depends. I've seen it every different way. For some reason, those 3 laydowns will always still be your highest percentage. For some reason, there's always, I don't know what it is, it's like deer hunting. You got a shot, okay, you shoot a mature buck in a woods, sitting there, another one's gonna move in and take its place, right? It's the same way with fish a lot of times. A lot of times, you'll be sitting there, those 3 places are the highest percentage or the best ambush places in that scenario. You know, it's where they like, it's where they live. Can you get in a place like all the way back in a creek, not so much main lake, you know, there's a less population, it's gonna take a lot longer for them to reload. You catch that fish, most likely that fish does live there. So laydowns is really key to shake fish off. In practice, when you're practicing, you get a bite, I don't ever want to be the guy who win practice. It's great feeling, you know, you feel like you own them, but them fish got a hole in their mouth now. You know, so that's a lot of times I think, now school fishing is a little different. You know, you might catch a 3-pounder, you're like, I don't know if it's the size I'm looking for. You keep catching a little bit till you get that size, but laydowns, shallow cover is super important. To either bend your hook in, shake them off, one of the 2 in those, just to be safe in case that laydown doesn't reload if you're practicing a new body of water. But a home body of water, a lot of times if I have those 3 laydowns, I pretty much know whether they reload or not. And a lot of times if they're more main lake, they'll always have one replace it, pretty much. Might not get its bite that day, but usually main lake, something like that, there's a lot of times, like a buck, shoot one, another one moves in and takes its place, a lot of times. But back in the creek area, something more resident, it can be a little finicky. It's still a high percentage area, but you catch that fish, it takes a lot longer. But let's see. Let's see. Well, what's your favorite color jig?
Probably straight brown with a living rubber.
How many jig colors do you like to throw? You pretty well just stick to that one.
Pretty much stick to that one.
Okay, good. That's right. So a lot of times when I'm jig fishing, you know, I can have the biggest tackle box that I can buy, and I can have full of jigs, full of them, all different colors, different size, and everything. But I always still fall back to the Old Faithful. That's what I call it, Old Faithful. This thing is Old Faithful, and that's the thing I like is I try to keep fishing as simple as possible. I throw 3 colors of frogs, 2 usually. I only throw a blue color in spawn, like very simple. This top water, I throw 2 colors, throw white and black. Jig, I throw black and blue, peanut butter jelly. Pretty much it. I can't even think of the last time I switched. This, I'll match it to my trailer. You know, that's about it. You know, this bait can be good like flipping, you know, a beaver, you know, it's pretty, a Texas rig, something like that. You can get a little bit more crazy with it, like a tilapia color during the spawn, something like that. But green pumpkin and black and blue, pretty simple. A lot of jerk baits. I know a lot of people probably like throwing jerk baits in here, right? Quite a few. You know, I keep that fairly simple. Jerk baits, you know, a lot of their colors are to sell to fishermen, to be honest with you. A lot of them, you know, they look nice and pretty and perfect, and man, it's just like a bait fish, but for some reason they don't bite it. Don't know why, but there's so many colors out there with jerk baits now, it's mostly to catch you. not fish. A lot of times, you know, there's so many other times I've heard, you know, people have a whole jerkbait box, throw a different color, fish don't bite it. Throw in 10, where they go to 10 colors and they finally catch one. You know, a lot of times for me, like even fork or something, I'll have like 2 or 3 of my favorite colors. And I'll just rotate them 3 if it don't bite them. Because I know somewhere, that's like with my jig, I know somewhere a fish is gonna bite this. I got enough confidence in this jig, and if I'm not catching them, I'll just paint the tails orange or red or something like that, just to give me that little extra confidence boost. It's not a big change, but it helps me. Or I'll put scent on it. I'll take bang, spray bang on it, something like that. Something to give me that little extra boost of confidence, even though I know they're not biting it. I know I'm gonna find a fish that's gonna bite it somewhere, and I just gotta get around the right fish. You know, like, have you ever heard the term, it's so much harder to catch somebody else's fish? Ever heard the term? Because it's true. It's so true. Like, if you have, and that's like, you know, a lot of people say information, but it is so hard to catch somebody else's fish unless you know how that individual truly fishes. You know, like, I have one person, that's Rick Cheatham, the person that took enough time out for me to teach me, teach me patience, everything about, and even life lessons, you know, to teach me how to fish. And that man, I truly can say, you know, if I know how he's doing it. You know, if he says go over here, I know most likely how he's fishing. But a lot of times, if somebody tells you, you know, dock talk wise, how to catch them, or you go to a new bait store and stuff like that, it is so hard for me to catch somebody else's fish. So that's why, you know, I take my little puzzle that I got, my little plastic sack normally. I don't fish with much. I fish with, you know, just a few bags. Usually, I just need to be more organized. Trust me, organization is so efficient, but I haven't figured that out yet. But I usually take my baits like that. I have, you know, a bunch of them, and I go out there and I just use my confidence baits till I figure it out. And when I go to a new lake, I go where I think the most fish will live, right? That's always the best place to start. Look on the internet or whatever, you know, you have this one lake, and it seems like there's so many tournaments being won out of that one creek on, right? Start there, figure out, you know, fish around, get kind of familiar with it, see what the fish are doing. You know, you catch 3 off laydowns, 3 off points, you know, couple off channel swing banks. Then you can take that info and that knowledge and take it and run it in other places, right? So you start high percentage area, and then you can take it elsewhere on the lake. Because if I get going on a big lake and I burn 50 gallons of gas on the first day of practice, usually it doesn't end well for me. So I usually start in a high percentage area first, and then I can go burn that 30 gallons of gas. Then I can go out there and start getting, you know, crazy with it. Start going over there, you know. Then I start widening what's going to happen or how I could catch them. You know, a lot of times I'll start with that simple thought process of just putting down the trolling motor and fishing until I figure out kind of what they're doing, where they're at, if they're chasing bait, something like that. Because if there's been that many tournaments won out of that creek on, there's enough fish in there to tell you exactly kind of what's going on, the general puzzle, you know. That's a really great way. And like, does many of you fish current? I don't ask that, but a few of you. Let's say the current's coming right down this way. Right down this way. Would it be better for me to sit up here and bring my bait up, or sit down here and cast up and bring my bait down? What do you think?
Sit down and cast up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. A lot of times, a current fish can be either the easiest fish to catch or the hardest fish to catch. Because a lot of times they can either be, current can either make him feed, or if it's like a natural habitat, current is their natural habitat, it can make them actually a lot pickier. So when they know something's not coming naturally down with the current at the same exact speed as the current, it's not natural. Now sometimes you can have a day where it gets kind of wild, they just bite everything that you put in front of their face. It's great, you know, life's great. But when something's tougher in their natural habitat, it's so, okay, let's see. If I sit right here and I throw up, I have the most less resistance in the current. Right? That bait is going to come down. If you got super strong current, it's still not going to fall as fast as the current because you have less resistance and you have the weight on the end of the line, and it still will fall with the current, but it won't fall as fast. So every time I move an angle over here or over here, whichever one, I have more and more resistance. The higher I get, I have more and more resistance on my line. Okay, so see right here? It just keeps getting bigger and bigger bow every time. So every time it gets a bigger arch, the more that current has to grab. That more slack that current has to grab to create resistance. So the faster your bait will move, right? So you want it the same speed. If it's at 1 mile an hour you want to find the angle that you can bring your bait down the naturalist. So sometimes it can be right here. That's the best. But sometimes you have to keep moving up until you can find that perfect flow that you can drift your bait with. That's a really good thing with current fish, but if it's like a system where it doesn't have a lot of current, and all of a sudden, bam, you get a rain, current's coming, usually they bite like sharks. Usually they'll try to eat the rod out of your hand. But when they're not, that's a super important thing to just start off with and learn. But a lot of times with current largemouth wise, let's say we have current coming down this braid. Right here we have a little nub, like smallmouth and high feeding times. Let's say the fish are active. They're just biting, killing every minnow that comes down there. They're just bullies. And they want to sit right here at the front of the current. Right, as soon as it comes by, they have just enough time to ambush it and kill. Right, anytime. But then if they get a little slack, or sometimes largemouth in general like an eddy, unless they're not feeding like crazy, they'll sit right here. So this current will come down, bounce off this, and roll and create kind of an eddy. So that's anywhere. That could be a bank, that could be a river channel, that could be anything. Current is current. No matter what, it's still going to do the same thing. And a lot of times, if current hits this straight on, it's got to roll somehow. It's got to go somewhere. It's going to go over the top, it's going to go at the bottom, it's got to go somewhere. It's like a brute force hitting something. It's got to go somewhere. Something's got to give. It's usually not the bank. And usually when it hits, it'll roll. Right here, and then split. So when it rolls right here, there's actually, this is a catch of your few fish that a lot of people wouldn't catch. They're getting technical, but hang with me. When it hits, that current will roll and create a little eddy part right here. Just enough where a couple fish can sit there. And that's probably one of the best deals I learned, because every time I would fish this section, right? You guys can see, I'll fish this. Usually that's where your most fish sit, on average. But a lot of people don't fish the face sometimes, because you get hung up a lot. It's kind of a disaster to fish. But sometimes you will have 3 or 4 fish that's an extra couple bites to your limit fishing the face of it. And usually if you can get your bait right cast, usually they'll bite every time. Let's see, got any questions? Anything, simple as can be. Nothing? All right, let's see. Let's go. Who throws a Cinco? I think everybody, yeah. A lot of people throw a Cinco. What's your favorite rig?
Probably wacky.
Wacky?
Texas.
Texas? Who you in the back? Wacky. Okay, that's one thing that wacky is so hard to beat. You know, like if you're in like a grass fishery, they're spawning or they're shallow or something, I will rig it like with an EWG, something like that, just right through the middle like a worm hook, throw it like that. But anytime I can, I love wacky. It's a good hookup ratio. You don't lose a lot of fish. And a lot of times I can entice them, but really entice them. If I sit there and put my hand like this, just keep going for as long as what you're going to finally get tired of it, right? You're going to either slap me, tell me to stop, push me out of the way. You're going to get tired of it, right? So that's the same thing with a fish. They got 2 or 3 options. They either move, bite it, or do something, right? They got to go somewhere. If you just keep it right in front of their face, eventually they're going to get tired of it. And that's a really important thing, like bed fishing or like trying to entice a fish. That's a really important thing. Is sooner or later something's going to happen. If you keep throwing it over him, where you can hang it right there, a lot of times they're going to make a move to which it's either consists of biting it or get out of the way. And most times they get out of the way, down you go. And a lot of times, a lot of people say, why do I fish fast? You got to know when to fish fast, you got to know when to fish slow. You know, you fish fast so you get in the area you feel like, right? I'll burn down the bank, I'll catch a few fish here and there, all of a sudden I get 2 bites. Well, I better back her down, you know, back her down, pick up something slow. I'll throw a chatterbait until I get a couple bites, and I'll be like, all right, why was those fish here? And then I'll turn around and usually I get a couple extra bites throwing a jig, throwing something like that on a lay down, throwing something like that, picking them apart. Because if there's 2 or 3, there's probably 5, something like that. So that's a lot of times when you realize there's times to be fast, there's times to be slow, depending on what you're throwing. But let's see, what can we get on?
Hey Trey.
Yeah.
A great way to visualize that current
Yep.
topic you were talking about is if anybody's got access to like Montauk State Park, where you got a really clear stream and you got trout,
Yes,
you can see how your bait drifts.
exactly.
There's no guesswork.
Yes.
And you can actually stand in different spots.
Exactly.
And you can see how the fish set up and
Yep.
the current breaks.
It's very true, especially with clear water. And another thing, current can tell you a lot, especially if you're running a river system and you don't want to like just destroy your boat. even knowing that, just that simple thing of understanding what current does when it hits something. So you'll just see a giant middle of a boil out there. Well, there's something creating that. So I theoretically would not run up. You know, like simple stuff like that, yeah.
I like an exact scenario like that. I was on a lake, it's a local lake, it's called Simpson. If you go all the way up, it's fed by crystal clear water and it's all really fast current. I wasn't catching anything on the main lake. I went up there and caught 5 and they were all probably around like 1 to 3 pounds.
Exactly. And I'll tell you anything, current can offset conditions, right? So like, if you have slick water and you have bad conditions, most times it's not gonna be real great. But if you have current and bad conditions, it can offset that. So you have bluebird skies, terrible day of fishing, but you got current, it can still offset that. It can still create something of a feeding nature a lot of times. So like, even though that it's slick, it's still bluebird, but if you got some current, like say it's bluebird, Tennessee River, nothing, all of a sudden everybody starts using their AC units, they gotta do some power, well then they're gonna turn on generators. It might take a little bit to get to you, but it's gonna create current, which can also create them to feed. So a lot of times current even can offset that. That's why I really like current. Current can be your friend. You know, current, you can never, I mean, you can't have too much current, but current can also help you so much. And it puts a fish, like, if you got no current down this break, they could suspend over here, you know, go up here, not even sit on a stump. They just go sit wherever they truly want to. But if you got current, they're not gonna sit out here and swim out in the middle of the current. I mean, never. I hardly ever will ever see one. But if they're pulling current, it brings them in here. It brings them to a few areas that's pretty well easy to target. You know, either like this, or maybe get behind the stump, something like that. So a current can be very good on just jump fishing, especially on like a river, because you can just jump fish, fish eddies, fish anything that will, everything that's laying in the water will create some sort of break. So it's really important to understand, you know, kind of how the current, and like you said, it's crazy. You'll go down a river, be one little big rock like this, and there'll be like 5 trout sitting behind one little big rock just because of the eddy. Same thing with smallmouth, like St. Lawrence and all that, super good as well. Let's see, who likes throwing a frog? A lot of people, right? Well, you like a frog soft or hard? Soft. Okay, that's my thought. Do you think wider or slimmer they can get it better?
Slimmer.
Who said wider? Okay. So it's just like anything. Have you ever had a vacuum in a house and you got like something that's like real narrow and you just keep going over that thing just till it sucks it up and finally you just got to push it down on it, finally it'll suck it up? That's like when it has a wider ground surface, anything that's like that, it's just like when a bass comes up to eat a frog and they suck. It's sucking that water in, so the more surface area, the more pull it can get, the better it'll get it. The more the quicker it'll get it, you know? And especially when it's soft. You know, when it compacts, kind of gets wide, sucks in there, like that's a pretty big looking deal. You can suck it down just like that, it's not that big. You know, so as soon as they hit that, it gets wide, and it more surface area lets them suck in harder. So it gets it a lot, that usually to me, it gets a lot better. There's probably a lot of other people that think differently, but for me, that's helped me a lot. I feel like throwing a softer frog and this wider body frog, I can throw frogs, you know, and I can risk my life boiling water at the house trying to get these frogs soft and everything. But truly, this frog is like $5. It's a Walmart frog, scum frog, and I've caught so many fish on that thing. And I mean, yeah.
You throw the Berkeley Swamp Lord at all?
I haven't, you know, and that's like going back to confidence. You know, when I learned that I have confidence in like this spook, I have a lot of confidence in this spook. You know, how many different spooks do they make? So many, right? You can't even keep, like if you go in a spook section, I get lost. You know, there's the old Vera spook, you know, 6 Sense had a version, you know, this version. Everybody makes their own version of something. So everybody's going to have a different opinion, right? Actually, you're going to throw this kind of spook, he's going to throw this kind of spook, he's going to throw this, but they all catch fish, right? So a lot of times, like if you have something that works and you feel like something that is working, there's no reason to really change, you know, right? So like maybe they say this is better, you can try it, whatever else like this, but then if you get in that mix up, whether you don't know which one's better, you kind of get negative, you don't know which one to throw, everything. So for me, like this frog, I have never seen a reason that it really fails me, you know, so that's one of the things, like it's always like if you have something that works for you, I suggest you use it, you know, but if you're starting to lose a lot of fish, that's when you explore your other options. Because that happens, you know, you get a bad hook that you've used forever and all of a sudden it costs you like $5 grand in a local tournament or something like that, you're going to find something else. You know, you're gonna figure out real quick that stung. And that's a lot of times, like even with this jig right here, it has a light hook. Has a real light hook. Has it burnt me? Yes, it has. But I can't find one with a thicker hook, so I'm gonna make one. You know, just stuff like that is like a very important thing to realize. Like even these Megabass jerkbait hooks, horrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. I would never throw them in a tournament, ever. I'd buy this, and the first thing I would do is take all three of them hooks off. Because a lot of times, any kind of fish that you can prevent is very recommendable. You know, everything that you can prevent in a day's time, like when I'm sitting there thinking, I'm flipping my jig, and I'm thinking, man, I should retie, flip, reel it in, flip, man, I should retie. And I know it's kind of frayed. Pow, I break it off, right? Right then, I'm like, oh, it's probably like a 6-pounder, and then all day, you could have prevented it, right? All you had to do is sit
You're
down,
gonna retie anyway.
cut it off. Yeah.
When you break it off, you gotta retie.
Exactly. So like that's just stuff when you think about it, do it. It's so simple. You know, it takes a little bit of that time out of your day, but really, you know, it prevented you from losing a fish. Now, sometimes you won't break it off. But with me, I get excited and I'm trying to like learn a World Cup for how hard I set the hook for some weird reason. And I had a lot of trouble with breaking fish off. I really did. So I had to go to a lighter rod, you know, change some stuff because I couldn't afford it. Every tournament, I'd have a story. Every one. People get tired of hearing my stories because I'm like, man, I'd have done it today. I'd have won that tournament. You know, like nobody wants to hear that, you know? And that's one thing that I've learned is like, if something needs to be changed, change it. And, you know, it doesn't take that much time. And sometimes it can be a super simple thing, super simple. But if you're thinking about it, it's so much better to do it. You know, we all have that one person here that's probably telling us like, because I did, I'd be fishing and he'd be like, you better retire. I was like, I was thinking about it, but it's got one more in her, you know, all day long. And I'll break one off and he's like, told you. And after a little bit, I got tired of hearing it. And every time I think of it, I'm retiring. Because it cost me every time. I mean, 3 years ago, I'd break off more fish. Anyway, it was terrible. I mean, every tournament, I'd do something that could have been prevented. Like this year, in the Elite Series. I literally controlled the uncontrollable, and the controllable got me. All year. Every mistake I made was completely controllable. You know, and that stings. You know, when you realize that you could have prevented everything that just happened to you, you realize really soon that like, hey, it's all up here. Everything's up here. Like, it's all little stuff. And I'm an all right, like, it'll be all right type of guy. So little stuff, you know, doesn't matter until they all add up and really bite you in the hind end. So that's when I realized, like, hey, I can prevent all this stuff that happened to me. All of it. And they told me, but I didn't really put it together. And that's one thing that's really helped me is like going on. I guess it just kind of comes with time on it, but the more you can prevent, the better on that type of thing. Let's see. Who's got one person that started them? You. Who started you fishing?
Who started here?
Yeah.
My dad.
Dad?
My grandpa, he fished in the original BASS.
Oh, the Red Man?
Yeah.
Or, no, it wasn't Red Man.
No, not
Top
Red Man.
100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Top 100. What about you?
My dad.
Dad? Fine.
My grandpa.
Grandpa? And that's like everything. Like those people that take us fishing, you know, you get to that. I did. I got to the age where I was like, they're telling me what to do. Like, they ain't right. I'm right. Right? Like, y'all are right. You always think you're right. And I did. You know, he'd say this. I'm like, no, this is better. You know, every time. You know, and that's like the most important thing I learned is like, the more people I could go with, the more opinions I could have. Don't mean you got to listen to them, but just take it into consideration, right? The more people you fish with, the better. Anytime, so it's like a puzzle. You know, you got this whole puzzle, but you're looking for your other pieces, but you don't got them. You know, when you go fishing with all these other people, you can take a little piece, even though this guy is clueless, absolutely clueless. He's going to do one thing that's intriguing. Something that might help you catch one bass. One bass, that's it, one. But it still helps. It's still that one thing that one fish could be during a tournament. One fish, and it makes all the world of difference. So that's the one important thing that I can say. Even those people that take the time out to just listen. Sometimes, like, even though your theory is probably better sometimes, it doesn't just sometimes you just gotta take it. It might be hard, it might, you know, you're listening to them, it's like nails on the chalkboard. But sometimes there's one piece of advice that will always help you. And that's one thing I'm really important. I've trying to fish with so many different people, taking one thing from here, one thing from there, and I bring it into my own puzzle. Even if it's what they do, but I have to change it, it's still something I learn from them. So that's a really important thing. Anybody that can take it, I'll take it up. Even if somebody that's just nonstop talking, your ears are going to be hurting by the end of the day. But I'm telling you, it can be worth it on any type of style of fishing. Anything in the life too. Because they have been there and done that. That's one thing I learned this year. you hear all those stories from all the you know, the older guys, and they, you know, been there, done that type of stuff. They have pretty wise actually. But no, it is. Let's see, what else? Anybody got any questions yet? Anything? Don't be scared. It's
Fishing in the rain.
Fishing in the rain. Okay, I like it.
Yeah,
Fishing
in a boat on a lake.
In a boat on a lake. So
Yeah,
first thing,
advice.
if I'm fishing in the rain, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for productive fish. I'm fishing fast. I'm fishing the top water. I'm fishing something moving. I'm going, and I'm gonna burn the trumpeter up. Right? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try to find the most productive bass or active bass. Right? So a lot of times I've had a tournament. Rain comes. You know, the water gets a little mucky. You got some run-ins. Right? Comes running out of little creeks. Great place to start. Right? They can be there in a matter of no time. They feel that. They know it. They will be there in a matter of no time. It can be hours. It can be hours after practice. It starts raining. You got some new water coming in. They can be sitting on there feeding, anything else like that within a matter of hours. And that's a really important thing, like a whopper plopper, a black whopper plopper, any kind of like something moving. I like dark colors when it's dark. Like I'll throw a dark top water when it's cloudy instead of white. When it's sunny or overcast, I'll probably still throw white. But if it's raining, it's cloudy, throw something black. Something top water, a fluke, or something like that I can cover a lot of water with and just go. Just burn it down, go. And a lot of times, even though you miss some fish, you're still sometimes gonna make it up by how much ground you cover, right? So you can sit here, sit in your rain suit, be miserable, fish one thing, or you kind of put a top water hand. For me, it works. Like I said, there's no right or wrong in fishing. But I'll get parallel. I see these guys, they sit out here, they throw their top water to the bank like this. You know how much strike zone they got? Right there. All this long cast distance, it took all that effort to the bank. You're only going to probably catch a bass maybe right there if you're lucky. If you're lucky. So right there. So what's all this doing? Right? Nothing. Pointless. Absolutely pointless effort to reel the handle sometimes. It can't be all the time. But for me, when I see something like that, I'd rather sit right here. And when I cast my bait all the way down this right here, or even however far you can cast it, I'm staying in their strike zone all the way back to the boat, right? So that's a really important thing. The longer you can stay in a strike zone, anytime better. For top water, chatterbait, any kind of moving baits, the longer I can keep it in the strike zone, the better. Now a jig, I will sit out here. Sometimes throw it out, depending, let's say the riprap ends like right here. I'll work it out, you know, get it out here, because sometimes there will be fish out here. But for any kind of like top water or moving baits, I love sitting parallel. You get so many more bites shot in the bay every time. You know, and every once in a while, like a jerk bait, you can cast it straight out like this. It just depends on what you're doing. Like a jerk bait, you can cast it out, work it out here and still catch them. But a top water is really, really crucial for me to either throw it. And I have lakes that if you're not touching the bank, I'm talking bank here, top water here, you won't get a bite. Like Wren Lake, Carlisle, that's those type of lakes. That's those type of lakes. You have such a small strike zone. It's unbelievable. And sometimes they'll follow it, and you'll get a bite way off the bank, but for me, it's not. Like a lot of those, I have to reel my whopper plopper where it's throwing water on the rocks. And I'll come up and just crush it because I got something to pin it against. You know, something like that. Have you ever heard of somebody figure eighting a bass? You know, on YouTube out there on like the California, and they figure eight it right next to the boat? Well, the reason a lot of those bass don't do it is when you throw it up to a piece of cover and you bring it out there in that open water, in between your casts, right? They don't got nothing. They got nothing to pin that fish against. When you bring it to the boat, you have a shadow, you have something that they feel like they can pin it against. So when they're running that bait fish, they still feel like they have the upper hand. So a lot of times when that works, now will it ever work around here? Probably not. So we don't have to type fishery, but a lot of times that's the whole reason of the figure eight, is because they got something to pin it against. Either your shadow, either the boat, something like that. They feel like they have the upper hand. So that's why that sometimes works. And a lot of times, like I was explaining to him, I sometimes think a shadow, just like this, overhanging shadow that comes right here, can be just as hard as the bank. Now that's hard to process, like they don't sound right, it's shadow. But fish can relate just as hard on that shadow sometimes as they can the bank. You'll see them, you'll cruise down like at Hartwell or any types of those lakes, you'll have a shadow running out, and you'll see a little nub sticking out of the shadow, and it'll get up there, be a 4-pounder just cruise off out of the shadow. Keep going out through, there'll be one sitting right on the edge of the shadow. It's like anything, if something's looking into the sun, you're kind of blinded. It's like hunting, duck hunting. If you got your decoy spread on this side, they coming into the sun, they can't get a real good look at you. If you set your decoys up with a wind, where they're coming in, sun's in their face, they can't get a good look at it. They can't pick you apart as well. So same thing with a shadow. If a bass is sitting in the shadow, they feel somewhat protected and somewhat in disguise. Anything that come back from here, anything right from here, they got the sun in their face, something kind of blinds them, and it's an easy target point where they can run out and ambush stuff like that. So that's been a really key thing. I had one guy tell me that, and I'm like, you're so full of something, I can't even process it until I seen it. And when I seen it, I've always had confidence in that, and it is a true thing. And even right here you can see, like I said, I wrote sun angle right here. When it comes down like this, these fish will sometimes sit in the shade. On the side, you won't realize that because you're just looking at them on live scope or something like that, and you're just throwing to them and they bite. But a lot of times there's a reason why they're sitting on this side. If the sun angle is coming out like this, it's going to cast a shadow however far. The taller the sun, the more straight down it is. The over the angle of the sun, the more shadows they have. So more times they'll sit, or like cloudy weather, sometimes clouds do two things. Clouds will either make a fish suspend over something, or clouds will dim in the light for the fish in the deeper water, anything like that, dirty water, which will give them less sight, right? So they can't relate to something. So sometimes when it's cloudy, they'll be closer to any piece of cover that they can get to, just because they got to feel something. It's like a dark room. Got to relate to something sometimes. So I've seen it both ways, where when it's cloudy, they're so tight in the cover I can't even see them on live scope. Can't even see them, like not even a fish. They will be they'll have the belly on the top of the stump or on the edge of the stump, something like that. So that's a really important thing to understand. Clouds can do two things. They either move them, like a top water, something like that, down the bank. They're just roaming, looking to feed. Or they can hunker down right next to the closest piece of cover they can find. So you kind of got to let it see and work out. Fishing's like a trial and error. So one day you know what they're supposed to do, but every day they don't read the same book we read, right? If they read the same book we read, it would be a wonderful thing, right? Every day you go out and do the same thing, it'd be awesome. But bass fishing is one of the things where there's no right or wrong. Take your puzzle, whatever you've got, confidence-wise, go do what you like. Go do something you believe in. Like, that's the thing. Like, I can tell you a lot of this stuff, but you got to believe in it for it to work a lot of times. Like, that's the whole thing of fishing. You got something that works, you take it and you develop it. Make your own thing. There's never a right way to fish, ever. There is, like, the tournament, the top 5 will be doing this, but there's always something else out there. You're not always going to find it. You might find it once a year, twice a year, at most. That true thing that's special. But if you do find it, it's one of your special tournaments. That's what I do. If I have 3 days of practice, I'll spend 2 days, trying to find something that I can get a check, something I can catch a consistent fish. That last day I have, I'll go try to find that honey hole. That's something off the wall, like crazy stuff to catch a big one or something. Something simple like that. But yeah, fishing is one thing, is just kind of, we're all here. Every time something's meant to be. We can't, and that's the thing, I'm a believer. I believe in the Lord, and some people don't really, some people do, but everything happens for some reason. Some things are bad, some things are good, well, if the Lord's so great, why do you let this happen to me? Right? If you pray for, to get tough, to get, mental tough, you can't just automatically just be level-headed, tough set. He's going to give you trials and error to make you tough, right? He's going to give you challenges, everything in between to where you get to that point. If you pray for something, you can't just, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But if you pray to be tough, he's going to give you plenty of trials there to figure it out, and he's going to give you that chance. And that's like a lot of times, and that's how you got to look at it. If you look negative on everything that happens in your life, you'll have your whole suitcase of problems, and you look over at this guy's suitcase of problems, and heck, you'll pick yours up and go home. Some people have problems that we don't even realize, everything else like that. But a lot of times, you just got to understand sometimes it's meant to happen. If you lose this tournament, what did you learn? You learn what not to do. Or if you made a mistake, you learn what not to do. So it's all up here, but we all do it. We all like to trick bass, right? We all like to catch them. It's fun catching them. It's not, sometimes other stuff ain't fun, but when I learned at first, I just like catching them. I just like catching fish. But now, I take more pride in finding them. I take pride in catching them. I take pride in figuring out how I can trick them. That's the main thing. Once you get that, it's a dangerous drive. It's like a gambling addiction. You're like out there like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go fishing today, trying to figure the puzzle out. But yeah, it is. Fishing is an addiction once you get to that certain point, but it is good. Just listen to a lot of people, try to figure it out, but nothing else is better than more time in the water, ever, always. I don't know, let's see, what time is it? What time we gotta go?
In about 5 seconds.
5 seconds? I don't even know what that, I'm bad about
11:45.
schedule, 11:15. That's good, well y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem,
Thank you.
no problem.